Right now, Ukrainians' battle for freedom reaches a turning point. Donbas, the heart of Ukrainian struggle, where every inch is paid for with blood and courage. A 3,000-kilometer front line where heroes stand against the so-called Second Army of the world. And in the south, the storm over Crimea is growing, the bridge is cracking, fuel is running out, and the peninsula is slipping from Moscow's hands. Welcome to Ukraine Today. I'm Zorislava Kolesnikova, and tonight we are bringing you the stories that prove Ukraine is not just fighting, Ukraine is winning. Donbas, the heart of Ukrainian struggle. For more than a decade, Russia has tried to rip Donbas away, first through proxies, then through a full-scale invasion. Hundreds of cities lie in ruins, thousands of lives are gone, and now Donbas has become the key battlefield, not just in war but in diplomacy. Who will decide its fate, and can Ukraine ever trust Moscow again after years of blood and lies?
Donbas is a territory that Eritrea has been trying to tear away from Ukraine for more than 10 years. At first it was done in a hybrid way, using militants and mercenaries, and then openly by launching a full-scale war against Ukraine. And now, after hundreds of destroyed cities and thousands of victims, the issue of Donbas is becoming almost the main stumbling block in future negotiations between Ukraine and Russia.
We will not give the aggressor anything. We will not forget anything. We clearly see that Russia is a long-term threat.
Nevertheless, in attempts to quickly end the war, there is once again pressure coming from across the ocean. Donald Trump stated that Donbas should be divided, with most of it remaining under Kremlin control.
Let it stay as it is. Right now it is divided. I think 78% of the territory is already occupied by Russia. Leave everything as it is now. Later they can discuss something and come to an agreement. But I said to separate it and stop at the front line. Go home. Stop fighting. Stop killing people.
At the same time, Trump denied the information from an article in the Financial Times published on October 19th. The publication claimed that the American president allegedly urged the Ukrainian leader to give up the entire Donbas, adding that otherwise the Russian dictator would destroy Ukraine.
Did you tell him that the entire Donbas region should be handed over to Russia? No, we never talked about that. We believe that they should just stop where they are now at the front lines. Right now you have a front line. Everything else is very difficult to discuss. If you say, you take this, we take that, there are so many options. That's why I say they should stop right now at the front line, go home, stop killing people, and that's it.
Meanwhile, the Institute for the Study of War is convinced that handing over the entire territory of Donbas to Russian control, as demanded by the man in the bunker, would create conditions for the aggressor to resume hostilities and launch attacks on Ukraine from more advantageous positions at a time convenient for them.
Two high-ranking officials told the Washington Post in an article published on October 18th that Putin told US President Trump on October 16th that Ukraine should cede the remaining unoccupied part of Donetsk region to Russia as a condition for ending the war, and that he would be willing to give up parts of the occupied Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions in exchange for this. The exact terms of Putin's reported proposal are unclear. It is possible that Putin was referring to the parts of Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions controlled by Ukraine, which Russia has illegally annexed but does not occupy.
Experts warn that even if Ukraine agrees to such terms, Russia would gain a disproportionate advantage. Donetsk region contains territories of strategic importance for Ukraine's defense and defense industrial base, including the Fortress Belt, the main defensive line since 2014. Which Ukraine has turned into a significant logistical and defense industrial hub.
Realizing that it is impossible to resolve the situation in Donetsk region in Russia's favor by military means, even though the fighting is already taking place in Pokrovsk itself, nevertheless, Russia has been bogged down in recent months. It is bogged down despite the Dobropilya operation with heavy losses and with less enthusiasm to carry out a blitzkrieg in Donetsk region and so on. Therefore, perhaps the positive sign is that Putin has already entered, the 5 stages before death, right? So after outright denial, he is now moving into the stage of bargaining. And perhaps this actually complicates the overall negotiation picture, because bargaining is exactly the point where Trump feels that his direct personal involvement and his strong desire to push it to a certain limit in the form of an oral or written deal, at least to end the ceasefire or to end the Russian-Ukrainian war, really comes into play. He feels an increasing temptation and excitement during the bargaining process to find a more or less clear compromise solution.
And while Trump and Putin are trying to reach an agreement without Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky has made it clear: handing over additional non-occupied territories to Russia is out of the question. Moreover, the Ukrainian leader is ready to join the upcoming meeting between Trump and Putin in Budapest.
I agree that if we want to stop this war and urgently move to peace negotiations through diplomatic means, we must stay where we are and not give Putin anything extra just because he wants it, just because he is a terrorist. If we truly want a just and lasting peace, we need both sides of this tragedy. How can there be any agreements about us without us?
The front line of freedom, 3,000 kilometers of courage. More than 3,000 kilometers, that's how long the front line between Ukraine and Russia stretches today. Nearly 1,000 of them are those of constant battle, where Ukrainian soldiers are breaking the spine of what was once called the world's second army. Every trench, every matter carries stories of heroism, loss and unstoppable resolve. This is not just a line on the map, it's the border between tyranny and freedom.
More than 3,000 kilometers. That is the current length of the front line between Ukraine and Russia. Of that, nearly 1,000 kilometers are active combat zones. Hundreds of kilometers where Ukrainian defenders break the backbone of an army that was once called the second strongest in the world every single day. And every meter of this line is a story of courage, loss, and unbreakable will. At this front, not only columns of equipment and infantry are being destroyed, but also Russia's military elite. During the full-scale invasion, Ukrainian fighters have eliminated dozens of special forces operatives from the elite Sinez and Kubinka units, those whom even in Russia itself are called the elite of the elite.
Losses of such fighters are especially painful for Russia. Each of them is not an ordinary soldier, but a specialist who has undergone years of training. Training a single officer like this takes years and requires significant resources, as noted by I Want to Live.
Recently, a documentary film was released to the public about the elimination of a sabotage and reconnaissance group from the Sinez Special Operations Center, which was operating in the Chernihiv region. This operation became one of the most successful since the beginning of the full-scale war. Ukrainian intelligence officers from the 54th Separate Reconnaissance Battalion, together with border guards from the 105th Detachment named after Prince Volodymyr the Great, eliminated 6 enemy officers. The bodies of those killed, as well as weapons and equipment, were captured.
Sinez is in operation. They enter Ukrainian territory with GoPro cameras turned on, and they record all their actions, if you can even call it work. Murder, sabotage, this is essentially terror, and they are the first to show it to their, perhaps, commanders or superiors to report back. That's the first thing. And secondly, they post all of this online to intimidate people. There are videos titled, How I Spent This Summer. And in these videos, there are actual montages. The killing of Ukrainians, both Ukrainian soldiers and Ukrainian civilians.
The Sinez and Kubinka centers are key units of the Russian Federation's Special Operations Forces, reporting directly to the General Staff. Only the best of the best are selected there, those who are meant to carry out the most complex, covert, and dangerous missions. They are trained using Western methods and deployed in operations outside the country, from Ukraine to Africa. But in Ukraine, even such an elite force proved powerless. Those whom Moscow calls invisible fighters become visible on Ukrainian fields.
Stop! Come here! I've got it! Holding. Get out. 134.
According to the I Want to Live project, during the war, Ukraine has eliminated at least 58 fighters from the Russian Special Operations Forces of the GRU and FSB. For the enemy's army, these are not just losses. It's a blow to the core personnel, to those who were supposed to conduct reconnaissance, coordinate operations, and prepare new sabotage missions. And while Russian propaganda keeps talking about precision weaponry and the professionalism of the army, the reality is completely different. Across more than 3,000 kilometers of front, Ukraine is not only holding the line but is also methodically eliminating those whom the Kremlin considers untouchable. And no matter how long Russia wages this aggression, the defense forces will always give the same answer. No invader will leave Ukrainian soil alive.
Crimea returns home. The final countdown begins. After a long and brutal journey under occupation, Crimea and Sevastopol are finally on their way back to where they belong, Ukraine. Western analysts say the collapse of the Crimean Bridge is only a matter of time. Fuel storages, blackouts and panic are spreading across the peninsula. The so-called Pearl of Russia is slipping away and the tide is turning.
After a hard, long, and exhausting journey, filled with many challenges and moments that tested their endurance and spirit, Crimea and Sevastopol are now returning to their home harbor, a place that has always symbolized safety, belonging, and the comfort of familiar shores.
And that harbor is Ukraine. Crimea is being cut off from the Russian Federation, and the collapse of the Crimean Bridge is just a matter of time, according to Western publications. There is already a total fuel crisis on the peninsula. Some areas have been left without electricity. There isn't enough air defense even for the most important sites, and those that remain in the chaos are now shooting down their own planes.
We note that as a military base, Crimea is becoming more and more inconvenient for Russia because there is no water.
So, the past few days have marked a new reality of life on the peninsula. The key event was a series of strikes in the area of Vardiska, where after precise hits, a massive explosion broke out. This is the largest oil depot in the area. According to locals, the burning depot in Vardiska could be seen from the suburbs of Simferopol, with the glow visible for many kilometers.
In Vardiska there were strikes not only on the oil depot but also on the military airfield, as well as on the Russian garrison station there.
According to information circulating online, an ammunition depot on the garrison's territory was also hit. In addition, the oil depot near Feodosia has also partially ceased operations. Due to several attacks just this month, 11 fuel tanks have been completely destroyed, as confirmed by satellite images.
Why is the story about the Feodosia oil depot so important? It's not just that it burned down on its own, it burned down with the fuel that was stored in those tanks. And that will be very difficult to restore. It's unclear what exactly was there. Diesel fuel or gasoline. But if it was gasoline, which is most likely, it means that the crisis this week in occupied Crimea will be much worse than it was the week before. So we wait.
At the same time, each such strike is notable for the fact that it's almost impossible to extinguish the fire. Experts say the burning fuel spreads across the facility, igniting neighboring tanks, and so the fire can go on for days.
The landscapes of Feodosia adorn almost the entire eastern part of Crimea. They say the flames can be seen from 30 and in some places even 50 kilometers away. Everything, it is said, is burning to the ground. The facility needs to be shut down. This is a recommendation for the occupying Crimean authorities, who have also confirmed that there will be no gasoline.
There will be no diesel either, local authorities add. Local activists report that since the beginning of the week, diesel fuel has also disappeared in Crimea. Under these circumstances, the promise of the head of the occupying Crimean administration, Sergei Aksyonov, to stabilize the fuel supply situation is simply impossible to fulfill, added Z propagandist Alexander Sergeyev. At the same time, the authorities are desperately trying to conceal the real picture of what is happening in Crimea. Thus, just over the past weekend, police officers drew up at least 4 administrative reports against residents of the peninsula for posts on social media. People in particular were outraged by the lack of fuel. Interestingly, Russians themselves are partly helping the Ukrainian armed forces to identify targets in Crimea. Experts have analyzed that now these targets can be found simply by opening maps on the internet.
Remember when Yandex Maps started blurring all sorts of strategic sites? I said that now it's absolutely clear where exactly to strike. Well, my friends from Inform Napalm noticed that the Special Operations Forces did exactly that. The territory of the oil depot in Gvardiskoye was blurred on Yandex, but for some reason that didn't help against the strikes. Mystical. Once again, thanks to all the Russian decisions that help increase the effectiveness of Ukrainian strikes, blurring military sites on Yandex Maps is definitely one of them.
Another decision that has contributed to the regular strikes in Crimea is the work of the defense forces targeting Russian air defense sites on the peninsula. For example, the day before, the main intelligence directorate managed to strike the occupiers' newest radar system. We're talking about the Valday complex, which was developed to detect small drones.
The security service of Ukraine continues to systematically reduce the enemy's military, logistical and economic capabilities to do anything, both in occupied Crimea and in other occupied territories, and even on Russian territory itself. But Crimea suffers the most because the air defense system there was deliberately destroyed, their ability to defend themselves was reduced, and now we are working as if inside the body.
By the way, so that the occupiers in Crimea don't get the impression that everything will still work out, along with oil depots and military equipment, the Ukrainian armed forces also didn't forget about the equipment that supplies electricity. Russian bases. In several regions of the peninsula, Ukrainian defenders organized blackouts.
At night in Crimea, several electrical substations were put out of commission. And in particular, the main power substation in Jankoy, or Jankong, as we used to call it in Crimea. So now rolling blackouts are being introduced. And here Putin is being shown in very concrete terms, yet again, that if he continues to strike Ukraine's energy infrastructure, the occupiers in Crimea will be left without electricity and fuel.
And the cherry on top? During one of the latest attacks, the Russian air defense crews got so nervous that they started firing at everything in sight. As a result, one less Russian fighter jet worth about $50 million.
During a nighttime attack by Ukrainian drones, Russian forces shot down their own Su-30SM aircraft. This happened right in the area of the Gvardeyskoye airfield.
At the same time, there's no good news for the occupiers when it comes to air defense. Analysts note that recently there have been more strikes on Russian territory itself, prompting a decision to partially redeploy air defense systems from Crimea back to Russia for protection.
That's all for today on Ukraine Today. If you stand with the truth, like, comment and subscribe to stay informed. And if you want to go further, become a sponsor and join our front line of information defense. Your support helps us expose lies, reveal the truth and keep Ukrainians' voice strong across the world. Stay informed, stay strong and stay with Ukraine.